Keep it rolling here, guys. Staying in the East. The Celtics are trading Jrue Holiday to the Trailblazers for Anthony Simmons and 2 second-round draft picks. Sources told ESPN on Monday night the move begins what is expected to be an active offseason for Boston, who's retooling their roster in the wake of Jason Tatum's right Achilles tear in the second round of the playoffs. So with that trade, the Celtics save a projected $40 million in luxury tax for next season and are now $18 million below the second apron, with more moves expected to come for Boston. All right. Was this a good move for the Celtics, Windy?
It was a necessary move, okay, because they were looking at having a $500 million payroll this year with luxury taxes. And that's just not a responsible thing to do if you don't think your team's got a great chance to win the championship. And we'll see what happens with Tatum, but right now they can't count on him. So they have to make some moves. And if you look at their roster, even though Jrue Holiday remains an incredibly valuable player, he is 35 years old, and he has 3 years and $100 million left on his contract. And so there were teams that I talked to, because there were 4 or 5 teams that were making offers for Jrue Holiday. He was very desired in the market. But there were teams that I talked to this week who thought for the Celtics to get off of Jrue Holiday, they might have to incentivize in the contract, not because of the player he is now, but because of the 3 years he's got left on that deal, especially the last year of that deal, which is a player option at age when he's going to be 37 years old. And so for the Celtics to get Simons, who is a three-point specialist, now he doesn't fit with their defensive mantra. He is not an accomplished defensive player. However, he is definitely a fire starter on offense, and he puts up threes at high volume. So Joe Mazzulla is going to like that. That is a player who will help them this year. But the problem is here, not the problem, but the reality is this is just the first move.
Yeah.
They are now still several, like $15, $18 million over the second apron. They want to be under that. So they're going to make moves. And I would watch, again, you're not touching Jason Tatum. You don't want to touch Derek White, and you really don't want to touch Jaylen Brown. So those other guys, and I would put on the firing line, so to speak, Kristaps Porzingis. Not because they don't like him, but because he's only got 1 year left on his contract anyway.
You can't trust him. He's always hurt.
Well, that's a factor. So I think that this is the beginning of the Celtics taking apart the team that won the championship last year.
The other thing that I think we got to take into consideration about the Boston Celtics is that it's going to be pretty difficult to do something with Kristaps Porzingis, because it's one thing to be injured. He's been ill, and they don't know why. Like, there's been legitimate questions from the Boston Celtics. Like, we can't figure out what's wrong with him. He has said he can't figure out. Molly, literally, he's been in the locker room. He's had a practice or he's had a game, and he's lamented the level of fatigue that he was feeling and has no clue as to why that is. They have not been able to figure it out.
With access to the best doctors?
I'm just saying, to me, listen, I will tell you something right now. I ain't going to make no recommendations or whatever, but, a noted biologist, Gary Brecker, helped save my life. I'm just telling you. I mean, you got to find out something. You really, really got to find out something, figure out what the hell is going on. Because the scariest thing in the world is when you don't know. When you have a definitive diagnosis and, okay, here's what it is to alleviate that concern. That's entirely different. When you don't know and you're a professional athlete and you're playing for a multi-billion-dollar organization, you got owners who are billionaires, you've got all the resources available to you, and they say, we can't figure out what's wrong. That is some scary stuff.
That's
so
concerning.
I wish Kristaps Porzingis nothing but the best. Figure that out. But if I'm a team, I'm not trading for somebody that I can't figure out what his ailment is. Oh, no. That's a different problem altogether. Now, with this move, Boston saved about $40 million in luxury tax dollars. So that's a plus. They're going to need to make more moves, Keith. I get that part. But the bottom line is you saved about $40 million. And then let's look at Anthony Simons here for a second. This is a career 38% three-point shooter. The brother's not a scrub. Now, defense is not his thing, but offense certainly is. Over the last 3 years, he's averaged about 20. He's averaged nearly 9 three-point attempts per game, okay? He's made about 38% of those shots. The brother can play. He can play, and he is entering the expiring year of his contract, so he's highly motivated. And, oh, by the way, even though they're not going to be a championship contender in the eyes of many because Jason Tatum is out, you still have Jaylen Brown there. You still have an exceptional executive in Brad Stevens there. You still have a championship pedigree because the Boston Celtics just won a championship last year, and they're one of the most storied franchises in basketball annals. It's between them and the Los Angeles Lakers. So all of those things help because him playing on an expiring deal, playing for the Boston Celtics. This ain't the Portland Trailblazers. This is Boston. And so being in Boston, if you show up and you produce, he's in a position where it could do tremendously for his career, do tremendously well for his career. I think he sees that. I think Boston sees that, which is why they went and grabbed him.
Now that Kevin Durant has been traded to the Rockets, all eyes are on Giannis. And while he's still under contract with the Bucks, unless he's given an extension, trade speculation will continue to percolate around him. The Eastern Conference has been significantly impacted by injuries during this year's playoffs, with multiple players suffering Achilles tears. These injuries could reshape the landscape of the conference, opening the door for other teams to contend for the NBA Finals. Okay, so Stephen A., based on all these injuries in the East, is that more of a reason for Giannis to leave or to stay?
For me, it's to leave. Personally speaking, I mean, I'm thinking about Miami. I'm thinking about a couple of other potential landing destinations that could better position him. But I understand, listen, his loyalty to Milwaukee is unquestioned. I'm just looking at Milwaukee's limitations, particularly with Dame injured and with how cap-strapped they are with the draft picks, or them being bereft of the necessary draft picks and what have you that you would need in order to improve your squad. It's not the city of Milwaukee per se. It's the organization and how they went all in and how it didn't work out. And now what can you do moving forward in the future in terms of mobility to improve your chances? It can't just be because other people are injured. You might want to go to another organization that can maximize that opportunity instead of staying in Milwaukee. That's why I feel the way that I feel. I doubt that he feels that way, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
Keith, let me just clarify the question before you go there. Is it more of a reason for Giannis to stay in Milwaukee rather than leave, based on all these other injuries in the East?
I would keep it short term on this situation. I would say I would stay, right? I would see what the next year looks like, because there's so many questions that has to be answered on the East. Like, the team you have now, move some pieces around, you can compete with those teams on the East. Now it's the West that you're going to have a problem with. So being as though like you have 1 year to kind of get some feel of what it's going to look like. You bring Dame back next year, not really sure what he's going to look like. Right now is just the part of your career with the way the East is transpired that you should just stay, move some pieces around, see what it look like next year, and then come back with the decision again next year based off of what has transpired in the East.
Let's talk some facts before we get into anything else. The Bucks have 7 free agents. 7. 3 or 4 of which I would refer to as core players, okay? The Bucks do not have salary cap space, okay? The Bucks do not control their first-round draft pick for the next 5 years. They can't trade it. They can't trade the pick or the swap, okay?
Wow.
The Bucks are in a situation where they cannot count on Dame Lillard for next year. Maybe he can come back, but they cannot count on it. The Bucks are not interested right now in trading Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Giannis, to our knowledge, to my belief, has not asked for a trade. Those are the facts, okay? Now, we are also before the draft. We are before free agency. Will the Bucks do some things over the next 2-3 weeks to put themselves in a position where they can look like they could win the Eastern Conference with those limitations? Maybe.
Highly unlikely.
Right. So that's why the league is waiting. People want to know, why aren't the Knicks going all in for Kevin Durant? Why aren't the Heat going all in for Kevin Durant? Because in part, there's other reasons, but in part, they want to see what happens here with the Bucks. And we're going to be watching closely.
Well, the team that should be having that position are the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat, especially with the Miami Heat, who has control of some of their draft picks. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, and the fact that you don't have a star in South Beach, but you got two really good players in Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero, you got to maximize that. This is Pat Riley. This is Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra is a Hall of Fame coach. Pat Riley is a Hall of Famer. This is a first-class organization. We all know what they bring to the table. You got to capitalize on that. You got to take advantage of that. And to me, the only excuse, as Keith pointed out yesterday, the only excuse for you not getting KD, when KD had them as one of the top 3 choices, his landing destinations. If you don't get KD, it's because you wanted to go and you wanted to get Giannis. That is the only possible excuse that you could have. You go all in, and I don't give a damn what Milwaukee asked for. You go, and if you can get Giannis, you get Giannis. That's what you do.
All right. Their status quo isn't terrible.
I understand that, but the point is, it's worse than that. They're right in the middle. You ain't going anywhere, and you won't plummet to the point where you can position yourself to get a Cooper flag. You're right in the middle. Everybody knows that's purgatory in sports. You got to be in a position where you can find a way to improve your chances, whether it's by sticking up the joint and getting high picks or already being elite. Miami is neither.
I mean, the Knicks are status quo is in good shape.
Got you. Good shape, not great.
NBA